Good evening. You're very welcome to the Business and Enterprise Show. I'm Colm, and you're watching Ireland's only live web-based business TV programme with over 2 million views in over 200 countries. And as always, we're coming to you live from the Top of the Town studios in downtown Cavan. Now, we've had many businesses in here over the last couple of years. A lot of them have been involved in food production, and one of the things that have always stuck out in food companies and food production companies is the amount of regulation and I suppose the lack of ease of entry because of that regulation. My guest tonight does two things to sort it out. One, she specialises in helping start-up businesses in the food industry, and secondly, she has written a book, Money for Jam, which we will come back to, which is kind of a step-by-step. Not only would it be great for you, even if you're not in the food business, but the latter section of it specialises in food business. So Oonagh Monahan of Alpha Omega, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Colm. Nice to be here.
First of all, as always, before we start talking about the business, tell us a little bit about Oonagh Monahan.
Well, I live in County Leitrim, North County Leitrim. I'm not from there though. I'm actually married to a Cavan man, not too far from here, and I'm from Galway originally. But I live in Leitrim, and my business takes me all over the country. So I've been living there for I think we're living there about 10 years now. Nice part of the world to be in, I must say.
So you would be a trainer, mentor, business consultant, but your speciality is in food production companies. What made you kind of focus in on the food industry?
Well, kind of my working background was that I worked in the food industry after I finished at college. So I went to UCD and did Ag and Food Engineering as a postgrad and started to work then. My first job was with Mr. Kipling Cakes in the UK.
He makes exceedingly good cakes, I'm told. Is that true?
Of course, when I was quality manager, they were exceptionally good. But it was very enjoyable. It was a really good learning experience working in the UK. There was a brilliant graduate development programme, and I made a lot of good friends when I was there that I'm still in contact with. And then after that, I worked for Kerry Group. They had a factory at that time in Monaghan called Grove Turkeys in Smithburg, County Monaghan. And I was a quality manager there, so we had a big Christmas trade. I went from mince pies with Mr. Kipling to turkeys with Grove Turkeys. So I worked at that for a number of years. Then I took a step out and I worked in pharmaceuticals for quite a long time, for 7 years. I went back into the food industry then. And I worked as the general manager of St. Angela's Food Technology Centre on the shores of Loughill in County Sligo. And that was really my move from big food industry into working with smaller producers. And that's really where I found my niche. That's what I really enjoyed, working with the small producers, trying to make a living, develop new products and get their products to market.
In fact, one of our previous guests, Alicia Kernan, she of NutriSnacks.
Oh yes.
She did her training in St. Angela's, had nothing but the high to praise of it.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So basically, St. Angela's is the food training college in Ireland, or one of the food training colleges in Ireland.
It is.
I suppose you did your apprenticeship training the trainers in there and then said, look, I can do that myself. Is that more or less how it happened?
Well, St. Angela's is the only college that teaches home economics teachers in Ireland now. So if you want to be a home economics teacher, that's where you have to go. Now, that's not the only thing that they do. They have a big nursing school and they have other programs as well. But on the college campus, there's a business called St. Angela's Food Technology Centre, or the Food Technology Centre. And its remit is to work with small food producers. So it's all outreach with industry. And when I was there, I was general manager of the Food Technology Centre. So I was there for about 5 years, and then I decided I'd set up my own. So I kind of went from working with producers on the academic side to working as a consultant with producers directly.
Now, you call it consultancy, Alpha Omega, cool title, I have to say. Where did that come from?
Well, it's funny.
I know where the term comes from, but where did you get the idea from?
Well, I was trying to get at the name for a company. I was trying to give the impression that it would give it full service. We would start at the beginning and bring it through to the end. So that was the idea from Alpha to Omega. And I did Latin in school. There were very few Latin scholars these days, but I know that Alpha Omega is Greek, but I like the classics, so I thought I'd stick with the classics.
I see. So, somebody is thinking of going into food production, or somebody is manufacturing jam or cakes or something and thinks they have a business. They basically come to you. What are the steps that you go through?
Well,
without a shadow of a doubt, to make lovely cakes, but lovely cakes versus Mr. Kipling's business are two separate things. What are the steps that you help them through?
Well, actually, making the food, coming up with the idea is the easy part. So people generally don't come to me until they have their idea already. But at that stage, very often, it's just that, just an idea. So they say in entrepreneurship, the biggest difference between an entrepreneur and a business person is really, or the ideas person and a business person is the ideas person will sit and think about this great idea, the business person will make it happen. So it's a matter about how hard somebody is willing to work. Now, when it comes to setting up a food business, you fall into one of two categories. You're either a high-risk product or you're a low-risk product. And for barriers to entry, the high-risk products are difficult. They would be anything to do with meat or dairy, salads, ready-to-eat foods, anything that isn't going to need any kind of treatment afterwards, things that are fresh, things that have a short shelf life, they're high risk. The low-risk foods would be foods that wouldn't cause a risk in terms of food safety. So the chances of you getting some sort of an illness from a low-risk food is very small. So that's why they're easy to make at home. Things like bread, jam, cake, all that kind of stuff. The difficulty is, though, everybody can make bread, jam and cake at home. Okay, so if everybody can do it, then the whole market's going to be saturated with the same types of products. So what I always say to people is, if you want to start small, you're going to start generally from home or from a small unit. Go up to your local corner shop, see what they're selling up there. Or have a look and see what is it that you want to buy that you can't get locally. What can you not source? And you think, do you know what, I can't buy this, I'll make it myself. So see what's available locally. Then you go in, you ask your local shopkeeper, you know, I make this wonderful, let's take jam just as an example. Maybe nobody else locally is making jam. So even though it's not the most, you know, it's not rocket science, maybe nobody else is making it nearby. So your local shopkeeper might say, great, that'll bring people in. People like local produce, you know, you're picking your blackberries from the roadside, or you've got an orchard or whatever it happens to be, and they'll take a few jars from you. At that stage, most shopkeepers will say to you, we'll do it on what they call a sale or return business. So it's a matter of, if it sells, great, you know, you sell it, we'll sell it for €2, I'll give you $1.50 or whatever arrangement comes to. Or they won't buy it from you directly. They'll wait until it's sold before they give you their money. And that suits everybody. It means the shopkeeper isn't taking any risk, and yet the food producer has somebody that's willing to put their product on their shelves without any big contract or any big, you know, hurdles to get over. It's a step. It's a starting step for people, and that's the hardest part actually, is going into that shop with this thing that you have made and asking somebody to sell it. Because if they say no to you, it's a real rejection. Like, people take it really personally when they get rejected.
Absolutely, because I suppose a lot of people who have fantastic ideas, not only in the food industry, but in general business, an idea for a nap, an idea for a petrol-saving device. They're wonderfully technology people, and they're great, and they put it out there. But when it comes to selling it, they just, A, they don't know how to do it, and B, as you said it, on your first rejection. Now, forget about your first. When you're on your 27th in a row and it's still 9:30 in the morning, that's rejection. So do you help people, we say, go from their idea to the business? But just to go back to the idea first, one thing you said, somebody came to you and said, right, I have this wonderful idea for a jam. And you tell them, okay, go out and have a look at the corner shops. If there's plenty of jam, do something else. Now, if their kind of only thing that they can do is jam making, does that kind of mean perhaps the food business is not for them? Or business is not for them? Well,
it could be. The thing is, let's say they go into their corner shop, there's lots of types of jam, but it's all Chivers or it's all fruit fields and it's mass produced. What they're bringing is, okay, it's still jam, but it's homemade, it's local. It's going to be more expensive, but chances are the quality is going to be better as well. So what you have to find always, and this goes for any business at all, is you have to find your unique selling point, your USP. Why would somebody buy your jam as opposed to buying that jam there? Or why would they buy your jam instead of buying honey? You know, or so what is the competitor? Sometimes there isn't a direct competitor, like something that's very obvious. If you make apple tarts and you go in and you say, nobody else is making apple tarts. I said, no, but somebody else is making cake, somebody else is making Swiss roll, and there's an ice cream fridge there. So if I'm going in to buy dessert, I could buy your apple tart, but I could also buy these things. So what you're trying to do is say to people, tell a story about your apple tart. Why is it so good? Is it your own orchard? Is it your granny's recipe? Whatever it happens to be. But make sure that you talk about the fact that it's local, it's homemade, it's got good quality. I always say to people too, be careful about telling the story too much and forgetting about the quality of the food, because you might have, you know, a great story about it was Granny's recipe and everything, but, you know, Granny might have been a rubbish baker. So you want to make sure people are going to like this food that they eat. That's the key thing with it. But it is making that first step, going in and having that bravery. And I bet you those same people that you say could be very good ideas people could take somebody else's product and go in and sell it, no problem at all. Because it's not personal to them. It's the personal thing that's very difficult for people. So if the rejection is not just, we don't want your jam, it's, we don't want you. So it's very hard for people and actually that's, I'd say, one of the major barriers. I did a Start Your Own Food Business training program recently in Donegal, and there was a number of people in the class. So we were there over 4 weeks. And somebody came in the first week and she had these fabulous ideas and she makes beautiful chutneys, really, really, really good, but just can't get past the fear of going into a shop and asking somebody to take their product for her. So what can happen for people like that, you can't be everything. Not everybody's good at everything. It's as simple as that. So some people are very good at selling. Some people are very confident, happy to go in and ask somebody to take their product. Maybe that lady leads to get a friend of hers and say, I am here on behalf of such and such. Would you like to try these out? And that's the thing to do. But you'll also find that when you get rejected once, you kind of harden up a bit. And you just, you get used to it. And you'll go in and you'll start selling. And after a while, it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
But if you really find that it's not for you, you say, okay, my skill here is making the food. I'll get somebody else to do the selling for me and give them 50 cents per pot.
We'll go back to that in a second. But if I invented, I don't know what it is about widgets. I don't even know what a widget is, to be honest with you. But if I invented a great widget, I can patent it and say, that's great. So if somebody wants to copy my widget, they can't because I have a patent. Well, the food product is slightly different.
Yes.
So if I start making homemade apple tarts and I'm selling them around town, and the woman next door says, Colm's making a fortune out of making apple tarts, I'm going to make homemade tarts. There's no way you can stop that.
No, there's not really. There's not really any way you can stop it because you can't patent an apple tart. You can't even protect your recipe because somebody could tweak it a little bit and suddenly it's a different thing. But really the key thing there is, and again, this comes back to a lot of other products too, it's what they call first to market. You've been out there first. Yeah. Colm's apple tarts are well known around the town. People love them. So it's hard for somebody else to break into that. They need to be doing something very special or be quite a lot cheaper or something different that is going to get somebody to change from buying yours, because consumers are creatures of habit. They'll buy the same thing over and over. Once they've tried it once, they like it. They say, I know I like these. I know I can serve that up for Sunday lunch or for dessert on a Saturday evening, and people are going to like it. I'm not going to take a risk with somebody else's. So there is that first to market. But
so people are first buying your lovely apple tart, but they're also buying you.
They are buying you. Yeah.
They're buying you as the brand to a certain degree.
They are, and you'll see an awful lot of that more and more and more now. I mean, if you go into any supermarket and you look at products, they're putting a name of the producer on the products now. In the past, you'd have a brand, and you'd have maybe the address of the producer if you had a complaint. Whereas a few years ago, especially on the meat side, you'll see they had the picture of the farmer, the photograph of the farmer on the meat labels. People could say, this was, a chicken reared in Joe McHugh's farm in Cootehill or whatever happens to be. People like to see that connection. And that's happening more and more. I notice the bigger supermarkets especially are doing that. They're putting the name of their high-end range. They're saying this is made by, say Super Value signature jams, or made by Fallon Jam and Kerry, which is a well-known...
Now, who pays for that? Is it Fallon Jam or is it Super Value? So in other words, you're a startup business. Yeah. Yes, you're trying to create your brand. Yeah. Do you have to pay for that? And is that part of your fledgling business costs?
Well, when it comes to supplying a supermarket, you mean to get your name on the product like that? No, that's a decision that the supermarket will make themselves. You don't have to pay for that. As far as I'm aware, the detail of their contracts is a matter for themselves. But generally speaking, once you supply, they buy your product from you, you get X amount for it, they mark it up, and that's the end of it. Yeah. You supply to them.
Again, sticking to the old apple tart, if we were to create Colm's brand of apple tarts, how would I go about creating that brand?
In terms of brand development?
Brand development, yeah. And what sort of cost? Are we talking a lot more than your small fledgling cooking apple tarts in my kitchen, or actually we've now moved out to the shed or to the garage? Yeah. We've got 2 cookers going now.
Well, a lot of it is about spreading the word. I mean, I heard a very good analogy recently. There's no point in Jimmy Choo opening a shoe shop in some small country town if he doesn't tell anybody that he's there. It's all about spreading information. So if you have a good brand, you've got to look at you got to maybe have a nice logo and that type of thing, but it all comes back to the quality of the food and talking about it and promoting it and advertising it and get people spreading the word and maybe running a competition. You might say...
so there's effectively free marketing you can do, and you can go to a marketing ambassador and spend a fortune. But in this day, I suppose, of social media, and as you say, competitions that you're running yourself, sign outside the shop, stickers, do at the time, do specialist label manufacturers. You can now run off natty looking labels on your own laptop and your kitchen table, I suppose.
You can. If you're a small producer, you haven't got any kind of a budget for any kind of marketing or any big stuff. So I always say to them, what can you do for free? What can you be imaginative about to try and get the word out there to promote your product? So the free stuff is all social media, Facebook, Twitter, all that type of thing. And in terms of buying power, the biggest number of people who are converting to Facebook now are women over the age of 35. So that is your group. If you're looking for people who are kind of buying for family food, that's your target market. So women over 35 who are on Facebook are the people who are going to see your product on Facebook. Yeah. So the like and share thing is going down a storm. People are still inclined to do it. But then again, everybody does that too. So it's trying to build the number of likes on Facebook and that type of thing doesn't really tell you about, you know, how well you're doing, because I know I got a whole pile of likes recently over something because they thought I was somebody else. You know, what do you do? Thought I was
How many Oonagh Monahans are there in the world?
No, it was the Money for Jam page actually for the book. It was funny. Apparently there's another company called Money for Jam in South Africa that does software. There you go. And I had lots of people asking me for software jobs, but I had to turn them away. But no, the word of mouth is a big thing, especially when you're starting local and small. It's all about word of mouth. Getting some flyers printed up, maybe going to your local school, running a small competition. You know, a little write-up of the local paper is great. Local media, this type of thing. Anywhere you can get your word out is really, really good for spreading the word.
So that kind of brings us back to if you want to be in the food business, it's not enough just to be a good cook, a good chef, a good idea. In fact, that's nearly the smallest part of it.
That's what I'm saying, that's the easy bit.
Everybody, well I won't say everybody, no one in my family can cook or bake or anything, but I'm sure long distance relatives can make great brown bread. Yeah. And it's probably the best brown bread you've ever eaten. But they make it and they eat it and that's the end of it. If there is somebody who can market it, as you said, for free, or can knock on the doors with their couple of samples and say, here you go. Yeah,
that's exactly it, because there's just so many people out there selling food. There are so many small producers in the country. Everywhere you go, there's somebody local. There's at least 300 artisan producers in the country, and they're the ones that are registered that we know of. But there's also lots and lots of small people at a very small level just doing stuff locally that mightn't be registered with Board BIA or any of the agencies. Obviously, they're registered with the HSE. You have to be in the food business. But
what do you mean in the food business?
If you were going to produce food to sell to the public, then you must register with the HSE.
If I'm Colm's Apple Tart, I can see a brand coming here. It's been mentioned so many times, it's been to be picked up somewhere. And there's a farmer's market in Bailborough. I know there isn't, but maybe there will be someday. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make 20 apple tarts, I'm going to sell them for £2, and that's 40 quid. Or even €2, and I'll make myself 30 quid on a Saturday. That'll be grand. Am I a food producer, and should I be Yes.
Yes, you're a food producer. So the letter of the law says that as soon as you start up, once you start up, you must register. The first thing you must do is register.
This isn't like working in kind of an L market selling dodgy DVDs now.
No, you wouldn't have to register to sell dodgy DVDs.
Strangely enough.
The thing. But the problem is they're not going to call anybody ill health.
That is one of the things, again, we've had quite a number of food producers in, and like any other product, you know, if you make widgets, you buy your widget machine and bang, you're away. If you're selling something that's made in China, you import it, you open up the boxes and you bring it around and you sell it. But food, before you make a penny, before you make a sales call, before you cook anything really, there's the regulation, and it starts as simple as if I am going to bake a couple and sell them in the market, the first thing I do is register with the HSE.
Yeah, but it doesn't cost you anything to register.
By the way, why would I register with the HSE?
Because as the health, all of the food law, it comes under the Department of Health. That's where it's registered from, regulated by, and the reason is that all the food legislation is down to protecting public health. That's the big issue behind it. So if you're going to sell something to the public, you want to make sure it doesn't cause them an illness of any description. So that's the
HSE. HSE. Department of Agriculture, Food and Agriculture. Yes, HSE just didn't.
Well, that'll be for the majority of people. So
well,
within the HSE, you've got it's the Food Safety Authority of Ireland has the overall responsibility, and then they, if you like, subcontract it out to different agencies. You've got the HSE and the environmental health officers within that for anybody who's say making brown bread or Colm's apple tarts at home. If you were a farmer and you wanted to make cheese or yogurt or something, it was a farm-based business, then you would register with the Department of Agriculture as a food producer. So you're probably already on their books as a farmer. But if you're going to start making food, you know, kind of value-added food, something that's ready to sell, then you register with the Department of Agriculture. If you do fish, it's the Sea Fisheries Agency. There's a few others, but for most people that I deal with, it's the HSE in the most case.
Now, again, Colm's apple tarts, we're making 20 of them at the weekend, and the cook was going to beat the band, and then we decided to take a step more. At what stage do you have to completely leave the domestic kitchen and set up in the garage or wherever with industrials?
It's really down to the volume that you're doing and the type of product that you're making. So your environmental health officer, first of all, is your friend. So what you want to do is you want to get them on side day one. So don't be cooking away, hiding and putting stuff in the boot of the car as soon as they appear. You need to have the environmental health officer on your side because they will work with you to help you develop your business.
Yeah.
So they'll come into your kitchen and have a look around. Let's say they give you the go ahead and they say, right, work away, make your apple tarts. And if they come in someday and find apple tarts piled up to the ceiling and there's chaos, they'll say, right, this is out of control. We're going to limit you to say, I don't know, 100 apple tarts a week or something. They'll pick a number depending on the product that you're doing, and they'll say this is what you're limited to in this kitchen. If you want to make more than that, then
we're still in our domestic kitchen here,
kitchen,
yeah.
Yeah, in your domestic kitchen. So it depends on the kitchen. Most modern kitchens will pass muster for low risk foods, apple tarts, buns, jams, breads, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's only, as I say, when you get into the dairy and the meat that things are difficult. But most domestic kitchens are fine. There's a few things they look for. They want 2 sinks. And people will say, I don't have 2 sinks. I said, I bet you do. You've got your main sink that you wash your dishes in, and you might have the little side sink, small little side sink thing. That's 2 sinks.
But none of us have any idea what that's, well, none of our house what's that for anyway,
Throw rubbish into mostly. But no, that could be used for washing your hands, and the main sink could be for washing your dishes.
Yeah.
Small things like not running the washing machine, preferably not having a washing machine in the kitchen because it creates vapours and that type of thing. Keeping the windows closed, not having pets around. It's it's common sense. If you went into a kitchen in a restaurant, what would you expect to see? You wouldn't expect to see a dog in the corner and kids running around and the windows open.
You would. Strangely enough, though, in probably the cuisine capital of the world, France, that is exactly what they in Italy. They everything gets done in these kind of old rustic-looking place. Cigarette hanging out of the chef's mouth, dog asleep on top of the bag of oats.
I know, it's funny because it's all the same EU legislation. It's all legislation. It all comes from Brussels. It definitely is applied differently in some country, from one country to another country, mostly because of conventions and traditions in those countries is what it comes down to. But your EHO will tell you what you can do from home. And then they'll say... You
said a very interesting thing there. Your environmental health officer wants to help you develop your business. That's not the reaction I've had from a lot of food producers. A lot of them have kind of come out and they have been your typical civil servant, which no matter what department you're in, it's the rules, the regulations, and I'm looking for faults.
Yeah, it depends on who you get.
It's not unlike, I've been told, having a VAT inspection.
Well, it depends what they're looking for, and it depends who you're talking to. I speak to some producers and they have no problems at all with their environmental health officers, and I speak to other people and they have difficulties, and probably because they're clashing heads a little bit with them. So I do feel you have to, there's a bit of management that has to go on there too.
Yeah.
And yes, some people might be a bit too letter of the law. If somebody isn't very experienced, occasionally they might be very strict on the law. Somebody who's a lot more experienced might take a more pragmatic view on things, but ultimately you have to work with your EHO. You just have to, try not to clash. That's what I would say.
Now, as I said, part of your business is Alpha Omega, which is your training session. The other half, as I said, is Money for Jam, your book. A fantastic book, by the way.
Thank you.
What made you write a book, for starters, and who's it aimed at?
Well, I spend a lot of time working with startup food producers, and they come into me for a mentoring session for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And I was finding that I was going through, and I still do, go through the same things with all the food producers. They want to know who their market is, how do they manage their costs, where they get their packaging from, who do they get suppliers, routes to market, distribution, all that type of stuff. And every time I would put together a pack of information for them, and I would send them an email with lots of different things attached. And I thought, I'm just giving this information away on the one hand. And secondly, I thought, there should be one place you can go to get this that's understandable. Now, you can go to the Food Safety Authority of Ireland website and you click on their Start a Food Business, and it gives you this 2-page document explaining to you what you have to do. And the first thing it says is familiarise yourself with the legislation and register with the competent authority. So it's very legalistic language, and most people
also this says competent authority, doesn't say who it is.
Well, it does say who it is, but at the same time you think, oh my God, that sounds very legalistic, and it's scary for people, having to do with the agency. So I thought, let me be an honest broker here and try and bridge the gap between what people want to do from the cooking and baking side and the legislation side, and if you like, be that person in between to help translate it for them. So that's how the idea for the book came up.
Now, and the first couple of chapters, it's your standard how to set up a business.
Yes,
it's no matter what you build, as I said earlier in the introduction, no matter what business you're into, you still have the same. What are you going to make? What are you going to sell? Who's going to buy it, and why will they buy it?
Yes,
and what did they get out of it? And to use the old widgets and apple tarts, it's the same no matter what. But I suppose the big difference where this is, it focuses on the food, which, as we discussed, between the first thing you do is register with the HSE. You know, I have an idea. You don't register before you even register your name, before you register it, bang, straight with the HSE. There are a lot of regulations.
Yes, there are. And that's why I wrote the book as well, is to try and translate those regulations, because it'll say, you know, go and read EC 178, which is kind of general stuff about having a clean kitchen. Honestly, that's what it's about mostly. And having traceability. Know who you bought things from, know who you sold them to. Yeah. Now, so it might sound very complicated. You can't think, well, know who I sold it to, but sure, I can't take the name of address of everybody who buys my apple tart. No, it's not. You need to know the list of shops you sold them to, not the individual consumers. Yeah. So it's trying to translate that kind of thing for people. And then also, if you look at the regulation, the big one is EC 852, which is the hygiene of foodstuffs. And people start to read that, and you begin to, you know, lose the will to go any further. You really do. It's the bits, it's knowing the bits to pick out. It's the same regulations that apply to you, whether you're Colm's Apple Tarts or whether you're O'Hara's Bakery or, you know, Kerry Foods or Glanbia. It's the same regulations. You need to know how much of it applies to you, which parts apply to you. And it's trying to pick out those bits that really is scary for people. So they avoid it. They avoid doing it, and then they run into trouble with their EHO because they're not compliant. So that's what I wanted to do, is try and hold people's hands literally and say, look, this is the bit you need to do. It's not that difficult. You do have to have systems in place, but let's set them up. I'll help you set them up, and then it's a matter of going with them. Now,
as a book, is this something for your mentoring customers, your mentoring clients or classes that you do, or is this on general sale?
It's on general sale. It's been on sale for a while now. You can get it in bookshops everywhere if they have sold
all
out.
All good bookshops.
All good bookshops.
And a few bad ones as well. You heard that joke too.
And you can get it on Amazon, Book Depository. You can get it online. So if they don't have it in stock, they'll order it in for you. It's still available.
And as a book, leaving your background now, as a book, is it selling well for you?
It is selling very, very well. It's been a very different experience for me. I was introduced somewhere recently as an author. I was kind of looking over my shoulder to see who the author was, but it's really enjoyable experience, the whole thing about having written a book and the whole process of putting it together, the whole editing, how you have to...
So are you kind of rubbing shoulders with kind of Dorena and of Rachel at all these book signings that you're doing, you know, and it bounces on either side, one at a time, you know?
Yeah, I wish. My children on one side, my husband on the other. That's about it. But no, it has been a really enjoyable experience, and it's a different, I suppose it gives me a calling card.
Everybody apparently has a book in them.
Yes, not everybody writes
but the
though.
big thing is actually doing it. Yeah. How did you come about to actually write it? I know you had the idea, look, you know what I'm doing? I'm giving all this stuff out. I'd be as well off doing a book, you know. And the amount of people who have said that.
Yeah, well, how I started off was I had to make a decision. There's a lot of people who do self-publishing now. It's quite easy to publish a book now yourself. But I knew I did not want to do that. That was a route I definitely didn't want to go. Because when you self-publish, you have to do everything yourself. And then you're relying on, I mean, you have to do your own graphic design, you have to organise your own printer, all your own distribution and everything. I didn't want to go down that route. I thought that's too much. And also, if I was sending in press releases to media and that type of thing, and they saw it coming in from Oonagh Monahan, they'd think, well, who's your woman? But if it went in from a publisher, it would give it more credibility. Yeah. So I had a look. There's a great website called publishingireland.ie, and it lists all of the publishers in Ireland and all of the genre that they publish. So whether it's education, novels, you know, women's fiction, business books, whatever it happens to be. And then if you click into their websites, it'll tell you what they want from a prospective author in terms of submitting an idea for a book. Some of them look for a couple of chapters, some of them look for a page, some of them look for sort of an outline. And the people that I went for were Oak Tree Press, because I was familiar with them from before. Brian O'Kane, who's the publisher, has a book called Starting a Business in Ireland. It's been around for about 20 years. It must be on its about 8th edition now. So I knew who he was and knew he was credible. And contacted them, and they said, right, put together the outline. These are the questions we want you to answer. A bit like I was producing a new product. It was always the same. It was really the same process. Sent it off to them, and actually in a week they rang me and said they wanted to meet me. So I was really pleased that somebody jumped at it straight away. And I met them and was very happy with the kind of contract details and that type of thing.
So people would say, my God, look how lucky you were. Your first publisher took it up. But...
there was a niche in the market.
there was a niche in the market, but you did your research beforehand.
Yes.
This is what I'm doing. Who publishes? Instead of just sending letters out to everybody and getting 25 rejection slips and saying, this isn't going to work. He said, right, I suppose you did what you did, what your clients to do. So that was your first book, and that was there's another book in you.
Well, we'll see.
Is that a maybe?
It is a maybe. It is a maybe. I mean, I have an idea for kind of a next step. It mightn't be a full book, more kind of a booklet, but I definitely have an idea for another book. It's kind of I suppose, growing your food business would be the idea behind it. This is starting it up, and the next thing would be growing it.
Yeah.
And in that, I would look more at, this is where you start going to your local shop, and I would probably look more further down the line at how do you then go to meet the buyer, meet in the big supermarkets, what do you have to do to really ramp up your business?
Okay, well, if anyone does want to ramp up the business and to want to contact you, well, how do they contact you?
Well, they can get my book in bookshops everywhere, or my website is www.alphaomega.ie. That's ALPHAOMEGA.ie. And I'm all over Facebook. There's Money for Jam Essential Guide. There's OM Alpha Omega. Oonagh Eats blog. I'm everywhere on the internet. Just Google my name and you'll find me.
Don't know how you get all the time to do it. Write books on the web all the time. Mentoring, teaching, training, you name it, she does it. It's Oonagh Monahan and it's Alpha Omega. And I said the book is Money for Jam. It's a fantastic read. I've been Colm Colgan. You've been watching the Business Enterprise Show. Good night. Talk to you next week.